Steve Hockert. I'm Chief Development Officer with Solera Surgical Partners. We are a development and management company that operates primarily in the ambulatory surgery center business. We have a couple surgical hospitals, and we do other healthcare related ventures such as primary care and urgent care management. But principally our focus is surgical hospital and ambulatory surgery center development.
Okay. So the project we did together a couple of years back was the OneCore project. So what's your role with OneCore?
So yeah, interesting. OneCore was personally my baby. So I kind of grew up through the Solera system. I was the chief executive officer for OneCore for a period of time, and we got to a point we were a tenant inside of a building, and the lease was about to expire, and so the idea of building a new hospital was very exciting to all those that were participating in OneCore. Subsequently, within 3 years. Now I'm with the parent company, Solera Surgical Partners, as their Chief Development Officer. But given my history with OneCore, was very intimate with this process as we built the new hospital.
Okay, great. So when we met each other, you guys were in the process of knowing you needed to secure a new facility, but you were talking to a couple of different companies. Kind of talk to me about what you guys were, as you were looking at developers, what was important to you?
So the main thing for us, keep the main thing, and for us, that's as operators, be very efficient operators. We are not partners on the real estate side of any project that we're in, and typically our physician partners oftentimes collaborate on the development side of the project. So for us, it was critical to be a competent tenant representative and provide the feedback necessary to our physician partners as they had questions as it relates to the selection of the appropriate developer for the project. So we kind of rode in the background and provided some insight and perspective through our lens about what we felt like would be a qualified, competent, and secure selection for a developer.
And when, from your perspective, as you were, and to back up a little bit, so your partners, the surgeons, actually became our partners in the ownership of that facility. Mm-hmm. As you guys were giving them advice on what you wanted to see in a development partner, what were the things that you cared about?
The main thing is, relationships for us are everything in physician partnerships, and all of our projects are pretty much physician partnerships. And so we wanted to make sure we helped them align with a development team that valued those partnerships the same way that we do, and value those relationships the same way that we do. And we achieve that through, ultimately transparency throughout the whole process, and being very forthright with all the key economic drivers and the key decision points along the way. We wanted to help navigate the crew towards that group, which ultimately manifested in the selection of Ashton Gray.
Okay, great. And as we went through the design process, mm-hmm. What was that experience like with Ashton Gray?
It was great, because what your team allowed us to do is do what we do best, and that's function as a tenant representative for the project. So what we did as a company is brought our experience to bear regarding throughput through the OR, the true needs of the hospital, how we wanted the space configured, and it was a very collaborative experience where maybe your architect had some ideas, and we had maybe some counter ideas, and ultimately we created what we feel like is a very highly efficient, very quality-oriented representation of what OneCore Health in this case truly is.
Okay. So talk us through the new facility. How many ORs? How many beds? Talk us through what we ended up building together.
Sure. So we went through, prior to the new hospital, we had maxed out on capacity. So where our legacy configuration, we had 2 OR environment, and it just was not conducive to throughput you would expect in today's modern hospital environment. So what we created through the relationship and through the construction process and the design process, we ultimately ended up with 3 operating rooms. A couple of them are 600 plus square feet, so we can handle any specialty. And then we have a third operating room just slightly above 450 square feet, excuse me. And then outside of the sterile operating room environment, we created a separate procedure room with its own kind of pre-operative and post-operative area to service more lower acuity type cases, high throughput type cases as well. And so we also had 7 inpatient rooms. We had to incorporate the emergency room. We also incorporated a clinic. Our affiliated physicians felt like they might run satellite clinic through the hospital location. That was important to be able to satisfy their desire to be able to do that. So we incorporated that into the building as well. And then we were mindful in the future, should future growth occur, the construction type was such that, the second floor right now is kind of at admin support, but it could easily be reconfigured to more productive ancillary service opportunities should the team decide that that's the direction they want to go. So I kind of feel like we built somewhat toward the future while maximizing absolutely what we had right now.
Okay, great. We're roughly about 40,000 square feet there.
Yeah,
right?
a little less.
A little less than 40,000. That's right. That's right. So talk to me about the construction process. So as we went through, and actually I'll back up before we go through the construction process. So the design process, we talked through that, and then we got down to budget and to negotiating a lease and agreeing to a lease rate. How was that experience? What went right? What were maybe some challenges in that? Kind of how did that all?
Yeah, fundamentally, I feel like, expectation management is so critical throughout this process. And fundamentally, I feel like the relationship between our organizations got off on very solid footing because so much effort was spent on the front end process. As you mentioned, we had a very dedicated project. It was a build to suit lease. We knew exactly what we needed. You knew exactly what you could accomplish within whatever economic terms we were trying to achieve. We had a very specific and targeted timeline that we were trying to hit. And so through that collaborative experience, we enunciated all those concerns and we got it all out on the table. So throughout the construction process, once we got through the design phase, we moved to the construction phase. There were very little surprises. I was not hit with a change order here and a change order there and beat to death with change orders. It was the scope of the project was very well defined. It was very detailed, and you guys were not afraid to memorialize those details in the build to suit lease, and then we just went for it and we executed those terms. It was a great experience.
That's great. So that timeline that you mentioned, it was a very tight timeline. Talk us through kind of the pressure around that timeline, and you guys were clear on the front end of what your expectations were. I think my team had some concern, could we really do it? But I think we understood the consequences if we didn't. But maybe share a little bit about why that was so important and what it meant to you.
Yeah, it was. We had an active hospital license, so trying to, when you have the end date on an existing lease where you have to vacate an existing premises by a certain date and then work with your state, local, and federal authorities on getting a license migrated from point A to point B and not let there be any lag time or lag time within the care spectrum in the care environment. Plus we've got physicians that are seeing patients and no one wants to delay care. And so, yeah, it was so critical on multiple fronts. Be it quality, be it access to care, but really fundamentally that just the business. We had to vacate by X date, and as you suggested, we were very clear on that on the front end, and you and your team was very clear that, yeah, we can deliver on these expectations. So, we all had that undercurrent of anxiety, given that we're in Oklahoma with potential weather events that anyone could imagine that other people have experienced, but we were fortunate, and your team was great that got us through and got us in on time and what I believe to be on budget.
Great. So talk to me about the site selection. So I know we looked at several different sites. There were things that we cared about from a timing standpoint. That was one of the big drivers. But we looked at some more traditional medical locations, and then we looked at ultimately where we ended up settling on was a more retail feel. Talk me through sort of some of the things that you guys thought about and why you ultimately settled on more retail destination location?
Well, several factors here. I don't know that I'll touch on all of them, but ultimately, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're very partnership and relationship driven. So we basically start with our affiliated and partner physician groups. Where would the building be located relative to their practice and relative to their patient population that they service? You certainly don't want to inconvenience their patient population or their practice by having to, travel 30 miles to their facility, right? And so that was a primary factor. Again, just trying to be the best partner to service our partners' needs and subsequently their patient needs. But secondary to that, being kind of in the center of ultimately that added value for us, enhanced value prior to our legacy location. The heavier retail focus, we wanted to be around an area. I mean, we've got a bright new shiny penny. We did not want to be a brand new building surrounded by a lot of old infrastructure. We wanted to be surrounded and have confidence in the fact that the development around us was going to mirror the investment that we made into our physical plant. So we just feel very confident that we nailed it, so to speak, with that site selection here at our location.
One of the goals, if I remember right, was being able to add volume, right? So it wasn't just, expanding existing, but being able to bring in new surgeons and grow the business and help that from a recruiting standpoint. How has that, exceeded expectations, met expectations? Talk us through how the first, 6 months of operation have gone.
Yeah, certainly. So part of that centralized location of where we're at enables us to do that very thing. Okay. If you put yourself out on the margin in the community, you really isolate your ability to recruit additional physicians to support your facility. So that undoubtedly, combined with the recalibrated use of the functional space within the hospital. So now we have capacity. Now we can recruit into that capacity in our central location where we're at. Given that it's proximal to many different areas of suburban Oklahoma City, for us it just feels like we hit that sweet spot of being able to recruit, and specifically we've minimum of 10 additional casual users from a physician standpoint. Physicians are looking for quality places that can deliver outcomes as efficiently as possible. And we have delivered that, we feel like, in spades with this building. And then, of course, the infrastructure, the human capital, and that resource allocation that we've made, we just feel like we've got a wonderful care environment. And so thus far, we're early in the recruitment process, but we've definitely added 10, at least I would call them casual users, that we would not have otherwise had we not been in the location and in the new building that we're in right now.
Great. What kind of feedback have you gotten from your patients as you've opened the new facility?
Okay. A great sense of pride comes from what I'm about to say. Amongst the board of OneCore and the physicians that have supported OneCore and even our nurses and our support staff that have supported OneCore, the narrative had always been, we are the best kept secret in Oklahoma City to receive care. And the reason we've always been the best kept secret is because we've demanded excellence out of our staff. And so the culture that has been created there, we feel like, is second to none. It's a very compact, highly visible platform. So there's from decisions made on the floor by your nurse up to decision made on the board by your leaders of the institution, there's very little in between. So it creates a lot of visibility to perfect the care environment that our affiliated physicians and ourselves as an organization can be very, very proud of. So leading into the construction process, we had that dialed in and calibrated really tight. However, in the healthcare, you're measured on things like this, and it was always that physical plant that we always felt like, man, one day the wrap around the culture, it's going to come together and it's going to, there's going to be symmetry. Right now we don't have it, but we're going to have it. Well, since moving into the building, we just had published within the last couple of weeks our first Press Ganey quarterly satisfaction survey. That's roughly a 25 set questionnaire administered by a third party. We just received the results of that, and we are in the 99th percentile in nearly every indicator as measured by an independent third party, Press Ganey. And so I feel 100% confidence that prediction, that one day when we put that beautiful wrap around the culture that exists inside the building, that it will manifest. And I did not think it would manifest to that level, but it's truly been unreal. And it's a credit to the building. Truly, that's a credit to the leadership in our nursing staff and all of our clinical staff and support staff. We just got a lot of people that are bought into the mission at OneCore Health.
That's amazing.
Very proud of that.
Yeah, congratulations. So what if you were going to give feedback to somebody that's considering building a new ASC or a new hospital with Ashton Gray, what are some lessons that you learned through this process that you would say, hey, make sure you pay attention to these things on the front end of a project?
Yeah, I think, it's all about efficiency nowadays. So I think aligning themselves with competent people that have been there and done it a few times and taken a few lumps along the way and learned those lessons along the way. I think if you're a new, let's say, use your example of a physician contemplating an ASC investment, maybe building an ASC, there's a lot that goes into that really merits a lot of thoughtful consideration that is brought to bear when you bring a level of expertise to the table. So, and I would even say development and management expertise, such as the services that we provide, in conjunction with aligning with a developer that has themselves, like Ashton Gray, learned along the way and learned how to do things better along the way. So you've got to bring an experienced team to really execute in a way which ultimately you'd be proud of. I think that's the key ingredient to a lot of things in business.
Great. What do you think the strengths of Ashton Gray are now that you've had a couple of years of working with us, getting a building open, now us, helping manage the facility for you? What are the things that you see as the biggest strengths of the Ashton Gray team?
Your team, throughout the construction process in particular, you guys operated with a sense of urgency. You listened to our needs. You operated with a sense of urgency. Our project demanded a sense of urgency, but after having gotten to know you personally throughout this process and members of your team, I just have to believe that probably permeates organization-wide for you guys. And so that, and then just again, that structured collaboration. There wasn't any aha moments or wild surprises. Again, I mentioned change orders and things like that. We had very structured process, weekly meetings, very comprehensive, sat down with subcontractors, sat down with the general contractor, sat down with the architect if we had questions. And as a tenant or the tenant representative, which is the role and the function that my team played when we build this building, our feedback was listened to because we're in this business. We know it inside and out. And so we offered a lot of feedback that was received in a very professional way, integrated into the plan, responded to, and ultimately executed upon. What more can you ask for?
I'm really proud that you focused in on it, urgency. So I don't know if you know this, that's one of our 5 core values at Ashton Gray is intentional urgency. So
okay.
That's awesome feedback.
Yeah, not surprised. That's shown through on our project for sure.
That's great.
Yeah.
So Steve, talk to us about the importance of equipment as it plays into these projects and the pre-planning and the being urgent around that, and maybe share how your team coordinated with our team and especially with our architects and engineers and how that came together. I would say this project specifically was one of the smoother projects from an equipment coordination standpoint. So just share with me on that.
Yeah, so our role, ours being Solaris Surgical's role in any development project, but specifically to this one in our ambulatory surgery center projects, what we bring to the table is very robust, highly experienced professionals that know OR equipment inside and out, know the electrical requirements pretty much inside and out, and have done enough of these, again, as mentioned earlier, have learned a lot along the way. And so that value, I think, from a tenant perspective that we provided as a management company, I believe contributed to the overall, let's just call it a very smooth process, because your team, I believe I got a sense from your team that it was quite refreshing to deal with an organization that had those resources available. So there were very few, if any, misfires on, wall socket placement, just grabbing a very simple example off the top of my head, or what size water pipes are needed to service the washer in the sterile processing area, or what level of electricity is needed and where's the plug-in most efficiently located for this particular OR piece of equipment. So when you blend an experience set that we felt like we provided with the experience set of your team, be it your architect and your contractors and whatnot, it just lent itself to just a very smooth process.
Yeah, we really appreciated it. It's one of the things that, when you take a tight timeline, which I think everybody can agree, this is one of the tightest timeline projects that us or you guys have probably ever done. I think from initial meeting to you guys moving in the building was less than 18 months, and groundbreaking to moving in was, under 14. So it was a very compressed, tight timeline. We appreciated the urgency and the expertise and the decision making that your team had on the front end. I mean, I think I can recall, meeting one with the architect, and we were already, digging into the details around what type of equipment was going to be in the building and getting specs on that and how it was going to be used, and so that really helped the process.
Yeah, and that from day one, in the healthcare space, particularly with ASCs and hospitals, there are a lot of regulatory hoops you have to be cognizant of that might be outside the architectural book. I mean, there are CMS standards we got to hold ourselves up to, and again, on that, aligning all that stuff out on the front end, it was a great experience.
Great. Steve, thanks so much. I know you're really busy. You
Yep.
got a lot of stuff going on. I appreciate you taking the time to come talk with us today, and greatly appreciate the partnership and the relationship.
Denver, we couldn't appreciate you guys more for delivering every bit of what you guys said you would deliver on, and then doing that on time. It was a remarkable feat, and on behalf of everyone affiliated with OneCore, we truly appreciate the work of you and your team.
Thanks, Steve.
You're welcome.